first is Cape Rehoboth Block Party, 10/14/18 is the date. And the Alliance will have a booth there and need some volunteers for that booth. So you can jot that down. Minority Liaison Community Meeting. And is that going here?
Yeah.
Okay, she's not here. That is the 10/15/18, I'm sorry. 10/15/18. And the expungement clinic, the next one is 10/27/18. Now we have some more announcements. Kathleen.
Applies to the remainder of the state of Delaware as well. And housing, affordable housing, small a, is a major issue, we think, throughout the state. The Alliance welcomes your input and comments not only tonight, but afterward. If you have ideas or thoughts that we didn't have time for, or you didn't feel you fully got to express, please send us an email or go to our website and follow up with some comments and questions. We look forward to that. Everyone's going to be given a chance to ask questions one at a time. One question per person at the mic. And we're using the mic because tonight there's a couple of competing events, and the City Council in Lewis has asked us to take this so they can hear the playback, because they think it's such an important topic. So we're actually taping this so that we can play that back for the Mayor and City Council and hopefully put on our website in the not too distant future. So please use the microphone, speak slower than I am, and clearly into the microphone that's on the center aisle. We know there are other experts in the audience tonight, so we're going to encourage them to stand up and speak as well in their personal capacity, not necessarily representing another organization. So I'm going to call on them if they don't jump up quickly. And finally, be aware there are members of the media present, just so you're not surprised if you see your picture, if you see your words in print at some point in the future. We have an expert panel, however, up here tonight, people who are committed to exploring these issues, have spent much of their career working in housing in various ways, or are now leading us in the evolution of our legislative county activities. I speak first of I.G. Burton, who represents the 3rd District, was elected in 2016, had a distinguished business career before he retired and devoted himself to various governmental and private activities, including the Sussex County Planning and Zoning Commission, where he served for a number of years. So he has a lot of experience in these issues, and we're very fortunate that he was able to make time to be with us tonight. Next is Marlene Gibson, who is the Director of Policy and Planning for the State Housing Authority. So she is an expert on what the State Housing Authority is doing, and you can challenge her because she brought some statistics if you're interested, that she can cite, or she can be challenged to see if she remembers all of them. She's been in this position since 2014, and before that she was a planner in the office. And prior to that she worked for the Delaware Housing Coalition, now the Delaware Alliance, the Housing Alliance Delaware. So she too has a long experience. And we keep getting longer and longer. Now we go to Amy Walls, who has 10 years in her current position at Discover Bank, where she is the Assistant CRA Director. And primarily her responsibility is community reinvestment, using Community Reinvestment Act and others to help promote housing through the Discover Bank, which is a critical component, as you know, of any affordable housing opportunity. Before that, interestingly enough, she worked in the local arena as the Economic Development Director for the City of Seaford. So she has hands-on experience at the local level, now at the state level, and working for a major bank that's playing. Last but far from least is Preston Shell. Many of you know him because of his ocean planet companies, but I didn't know that he's actually on the board of or an executive in over 50 LLCs. You might form one tonight after this meeting, I don't know, just this meeting, who knows. But he's been an executive as CEO or chairman or other principal in many companies, in addition to which he's been very involved in the nonprofit world. And I should just point out that he's, I believe, still chairman of the Delaware branch of the Nature Conservancy.
I dropped that about a year and a half.
It dropped out, all right.
But I did do that for a while.
He had time for his family, I guess, in the last year and a half. He's also worked for the Sussex County Land Trust, and he served as chairman of that previously. Among other things that he and his companies have donated to. So, as a major developer, he has certainly had hands-on experience in all of the topics we're talking about tonight and has some proposals pending before local government entities. So, I'm going to start off, as I said, with a couple of questions, And I encourage you, when you have a moment, to stand up and we'll get your questions right off. So, I'm going to open it up to anybody on the panel to ask the question. If I don't hear the response immediately, I will pick on you. Is there a demand for affordable housing in Sussex County? Okay, I'm going to pick on you. I'm going to pick on you. Go ahead.
I'm gonna try to talk close enough. Is that close enough? All right. Okay. Ooh, got real loud there. There definitely is demand for affordable housing in Sussex County. As our last needs assessment certainly showed, DSHA and its partners do a housing needs assessment at least every 5 years. Our last one showed significant demand for rental housing and also for new home ownership units, and especially for low and moderate income families. So there certainly is demand.
Where is there now affordable housing in Sussex County? Amy, do you want to take that?
Okay, so, I think we're really fortunate that we do have some developers in Sussex County that have developed primarily the low-income housing tax credit rental properties using, that federal program as well as the USDA programs. So we know that we have hundreds of existing units that are affordable to people at 60% of area median income and below in the eastern side of the county. Whether those few hundred are enough, I don't think it is a true statement. And we have quite a few in western Sussex as well. Seaford has a number of units that are available to the general public, but also to people who are in income restricted communities as well. Bridgeville as well, they even have some properties that are available for rent for people who are in the migrant farm communities that are coming in to work with crops in the summertime. The issue that I think we don't have is a lot of for sale properties that are being developed outside of our traditional affordable housing processes, like the Habitat for Humanity model or the Milford Housing's self-help housing program. So one of the things that we experience, we have a relationship with the SDARJ for single-family home mortgages. So we make a commitment at the beginning of the year because we don't have our own mortgage program. And we make a commitment of millions of dollars. This year is $80 million. And said if you can find low and moderate income home buyers in Kent and Sussex County, we will guarantee that we'll provide dollars for those loans. And we'll do a premium. You can do things like down payments, settlement cost assistance, and the like. And we have no problem filling that obligation in Kent County. The SHA is able to, get those loans really out on the street. People are really using it, and they're not using it in Sussex County. And we really believe that's because they can't find properties to buy for people who are on those income levels. So, we have resources that are available. DSHA has down payment settlement cost assistance, but if there are no properties for sale that somebody in that income range can buy, then, we know just from the numbers of mortgages that we're able to purchase through those programs that they're just not there.
Let me steal a little thunder from my colleague here and give you some statistics to chew on and we can talk about. There are 73 low-income housing complexes containing 3,937 quote-unquote affordable apartments for rent in Sussex County. Many of those are income-based housing with about 1,500 apartments that are set rent based on income. There are HUD apartments called Project 800, of which there are subsidies available for those rents. There are another 4,100 apartments that are low-income apartments but don't have any government sponsorship or backing. And one more statistic to think about as we chew on this issue tonight about purchasing. If you look at the latest statistics from the Delaware State Housing Authority, with people in 30% median income AIG for Sussex County, they are approximately $253,000 below the affordability gap for buying a house, the average median house in the state, in the county. If you take them up to 50% AIG, they're only behind $191,000 in terms of affording a median house in Sussex County. So what Amy just said in terms of finding affordable housing, if you look at what housing is out there, there is an astronomical gap for the people we're talking about. So let me try the next question. Is there workforce housing available in Sussex County? Preston, I'm going to ask you to address that, please.
The answer is very little. And just so everybody understands the difference between affordable housing and workforce housing, there's not really a black and white line, it's more gray, but less than 60% AMI is considered affordable housing, and 60 to 120% AMI is workforce housing. Right now, there's very few, if any, programs supporting workforce housing in eastern Sussex County, or in Sussex County. And you can find something that could fall within the 60 to 120% AMI affordable income level if you're kind of west of Route 113, but in the beach area, it's gone. And we'll probably, I'm not gonna kind of jump ahead, because I assume that Drew's gonna ask some questions related to this, but there's a long, detailed explanation of why that's the case and why it's getting worse. If the county and other groups don't start, including myself, don't start doing stuff about it, it's only gonna be worse.
G, could you comment on what role you think the state is playing or should be playing in providing affordable housing, both capital A affordable and workforce housing in Sussex County?
I don't think the county's doing anything. We've never really looked at it from a county perspective that has worked. We have a workforce housing model where we gave developers expedited review and a couple other things, and it didn't produce any workforce or affordable housing. So I'm here tonight, and I'm on council now to try and change that, because I agree with Preston is that it's only going to get worse.
So I'm going to open up to any of you. What do we do to break that logjam? What do we do to provide opportunities to own homes and or to have subsidy for rent that's on an ongoing basis? What can we do? What should the government do at the county level or the state level?
So I can speak from the perspective of a for-profit developer. I can tell you the guys that do the tax credit kind of HUD deals must be geniuses. Because I went to a governor's conference on housing, and these guys walked through their capital stacks, which is essentially where they got the money to build the projects they built. And in my capital stack, there's two line items. It's cash or equity, which either came out of my pocket or another investor's pocket, and it's conventional bank debt. So two line items. When you looked at the capital stacks of these low-income tax credit projects, there was 12 to 15 line items on most of them, and it was extremely complicated. So the people that put together those types of deals, not to mention the applications for these things, are like that thick. Well, it's probably a lot bigger. I haven't done it yet. Someday I'll endeavor to do it. But speaking from the perspective of kind of workforce housing, the things that could help are making it a little bit easier for developers to find land that can accommodate an efficient style of construction that could allow them to either offer rents or for sale product at affordable levels. Right now, one of our problems in this county that we really can't get past is the fact that the base underlying zoning is for 2 units per acre. A lot of people may think that's great. It's horrible. In 1973, when we originally designated properties with zoning, we should have come up with what I'll refer to as a rural or farming zoning at that time. If we had 85% of the land that's out in the county with a rural or farm zoning that might allow 1 unit for every 20 acres, then it would be a lot easier for guys like IG and the county council to upzone properties that are within sewer districts, close to towns, close to amenities, close to public transportation, and allow higher density. But these guys have their backs up against the wall, because if they start giving guys like me higher density, while there's still 2 units per acre out there on every acre in this county, and if they make assumptions that that's actually going to be built out to that level, which it really won't be. We've done a pretty good job in this county of preserving land, and we have a lot of wetlands, which, quite frankly, every year we have more wetlands, and it's just going to keep increasing. It makes it really hard for them to upzone these properties. Not to mention, every time I sell a property to a wealthy retiree from out of state, I'm indirectly stabbing myself in the back. That wealthy retiree does not show up to my next public hearing telling me how great of a guy I am and how I should keep getting approvals for more development. They buy their home, and this is somewhat of a generalization, so please don't think I'm saying every single person we sell homes to does this, but they buy their home, and then they don't want anybody else to buy a home. They say, oh, the traffic's horrible, I moved out of New Jersey or DC or wherever for a reason, and you guys keep building houses, and they don't see the hypocrisy in the fact that if we weren't doing that, they probably wouldn't live there themselves. But so it's very difficult for me to walk in and make an argument in front of the county, particularly if I'm using words like affordable and workforce, and get a rezoning. Naturally, these types of projects should be near existing development. These projects should not be out in the middle of the county in a rural area next to a bunch of farms. They should be near public transportation. They should be near shopping. They should be near, obviously they have to be in a sewer district, a water district. It's helpful if they're as close as possible to job centers, so like the BB Medical Center. But guess what? When you find a property like that, you naturally have neighbors. And I don't fault these neighbors because I understand their perspective, but these neighbors do not show up to my hearings saying, yeah, we really believe in workforce housing. They'll say one of two things. If they're more progressive, they'll say, we understand the need for workforce housing, we're glad you're proposing it, we just think this is a horrible location. And then when you say, well, please point out the non-horrible location in this county, there's silence. They can't really find a location that works, other than one that's far, far from their house. Or they'll say, or they'll just kind of tear into you and not be, and basically just refute your entire development. But so it makes it really difficult. There's no zoning left in this county. Back in the day, actually, you guys might know a guy named Brett Dyer and Dyer McRae did some low-income tax credit projects, but they did it on C1 zoned land. Because C1, we don't have C1 anymore, we have CR1. C1 zone land that allowed for 12 units per acre. So I did it too. I went up and down the Route 1 corridor back when you can sell condos, and we did a lot of 12 unit per acre condo development on the C1 zone land that for whatever reason didn't lend itself to being commercially developed or retail. And that land's gone. So trust me, I've looked. There is no 12 unit per acre or even 6 unit or 8 unit or 10 unit per acre land out there. So I've got to rezone it. And it's very difficult, the political environment that we're in, and you can't look at guys like IG and say, well, IG, this is your fault. It's not IG. It's the lack of understanding, which is why things like this are so helpful. It's the lack of understanding of the people that move down here, or the lack of caring of the lack of affordability and workforce housing. It causes all kinds of issues. I'm going to kind of lend the mic to someone else right now, but I'm sure we'll get into the problems associated with pushing everybody that needs to find affordable housing situation further and further west. Because that's a big problem. We have to have people live near where they work, and we have to have some affordable housing near the beach.
IG, if you have difficulty understanding the HUD application with an MBA from Harvard Business School, not like the rest of us. IG, could you talk about the political realities that we're facing?
I think what Preston just said is kind of where we're at. I've been on council for 2 years, and just getting the definitions of just what we're talking about. I mean, you have conversations, and I think I'm talking about workforce, and I'm really talking about affordable. And I don't really know the definitions between the two. And I'm thinking it's a rental program, and they're thinking it's a buy program. So I think the first job that we have to do is we have to say, what are we talking about? And we got to shrink it down into just segments, because I think when you do that, you can then talk about the zoning that is needed. You can talk about what the goals are that you would want the developer to achieve. And there's a huge learning curve that we as council, we as just the area, when we're going to try and attack this problem, we have to define what segment we're going to go after, and then we have to set goals to see if we're achieving them. The program that I mentioned earlier has been on the books for 12 years, and nobody has produced one unit. Well, you'd have thought that maybe 10 years ago you'd revamp the plan, because it's not So, I think that we gotta define what we're talking about, and then we have to set goals on what we should yield from this, because there's no sense in having a plan that yields 10 or 12 units, and we really need a couple thousand. So it's like any business, you figure out what you want to do, and then how you get there, and then you measure if you're there. So that's kind of the political line.
Well, I was going to add on to Preston's comments, but I'll add on to that and say that's definitely the starting point, is understanding what the housing needs in your community are, so you can craft policies to address them. To narrow in on rental housing at different income levels, if it is more in the workforce range, kind of 80 to 120% of area median income, or more deeper affordability, because all the different policies that are out there, each one won't necessarily fit to create all the things. They need to be kind of tailored down into to get the results that you want. And I would applaud the county for the great information and wonderful job done looking at the county's housing needs in the draft comprehensive plan. And to circle back to Preston's comments about the need for kind of the local, the supportive local development environment, it definitely is not one solution. And Amy mentioned mortgages and down payment assistance that are helpful to get folks into home ownership, but there need to be homes for them to buy. And at the same time, if there's capital financing available, all of those 8 or 9 sources that were stacked up were, I'm sure, a different mix of federal and state and private funding that are all have been layered on together. But to be able to do that, you still need the local development environment that allows it to happen, even if those resources are there.
Amy, are you familiar with the Newcastle workforce housing program?
Not in detail, but I know some about it.
Do you know whether than describing in detail, do you know how successful or not it's been?
They did have a really great forum at the governor's conference on housing, where they had a couple of developers who came in and talked about utilizing the ordinance to increase density, to increase the availability of affordable housing. And I know, Preston, you were on that panel as well. And the discussion was around 2 developments in Middletown, and one had been zoned under the current zoning for roughly 100 to 150 units or so. Yeah, they got upgraded to over 400 available units by utilizing the program. And of those 400 units, I believe it was 80 to 100 of those units. Yeah, it might have been a little less, that were designed to be set aside for people of moderate income. And so there were deed restrictions on those properties as well. So if you buy the home at the moderate level, and then you try to sell the home within the next 10 years, you had to sell it to another affordable buyer. You couldn't just cash out of the equity and walk away. And I know Newcastle County has gone through a number of revisions of that ordinance. They mentioned that the first provisions allowed you to rent the properties in the event that you weren't able to sell the properties, and then the further revisions, you have to sell the properties, you can't rent them. I think the challenge that I saw, certainly in the panel, was that there was a feeling from the developers that they weren't able to reach the appropriate buyers, and I would say, that's an outrage issue. It's in Middletown, it's in Townsend area, and so it's a little bit further out, right? So, you're creating these units, you're creating them further away from perhaps the employment center. So I think, certainly that's a challenge. We want to bring people in, to those centers. And then I think the other thing is you really have to connect with the housing counseling agencies and others, and they will help to get you that pipeline once people know that they're there. I mean, the reality is we were at a conference of people who were really interested in affordable housing, and there were housing counselors all throughout the room, and none of them knew about the development. And so they have people walking in their doors every day saying, I'm looking for an affordable unit, I'm looking for an affordable unit, and yet there's affordable units there, and they're trying to sell them. And so, I think there was a real disconnect that I felt in the room between what's available and what people were aware of.
One of the criticisms we hear is that affordable housing, workforce housing, which gets these special credits or tax incentives, how do we guarantee that they're occupied by people who are workforce housing and not the people coming in from out of state who are renting them for a short period of time or how do we guarantee that those protections are in place over time?
I'd love to comment on that. So, I think this isn't rocket science. We act like it's rocket science, it's not rocket science. You know, you look at the low-income housing tax credit, you know, rental housing, all the HUD programs, the USDAs and others. There are property management companies all over our great state managing thousands of units of affordable housing for rental. But I think conversely, the other thing that we need to do from a county and a local level is draft ordinances that allow when, you know, someone like Preston develops a affordable housing development and he gets whatever incentives he gets, that enable him to do those restrictions, because we can't ask Preston to break the law and say, I'm sorry, you can't buy this house, right? There has to be some sort of provision there that enables him to say, this is the standard. We're looking for people who, you know, live or work or, you know, have a connection, have family, you know, in Sussex County. We have to, you know, enable that, and, you know, it can be done. And we act like it can't be done, and I just don't think it's that hard. And I think, you know, for rental programs, you know, the property management companies, they're out there now, they're operating today. They can either teach you how it's done, or they're happy to manage your rental housing moving forward.
Preston, do you want to comment on that?
No, other than I think for the rental programs, it's a tad easier, and the laws are a little bit more lenient than if you do a for-profit, for-sale project, and someone walks in with a financial capacity to buy your home, and you say, I'm sorry, you make too much money. I'm still wary about the legality of that. But I'm open to ideas for how to kind of target housing towards who you're essentially buying for. And I think there's ways of doing that. I think you might not get 100%, but I can tell you when we go out and market our active adult projects and tell people they're active adult and they're for those that are 55 years old or older, I don't get a lot of 27-year-olds showing up to that house, even though legally I have to sell 20% of my constructed homes to 27-year-olds or anybody under 55. And only then can I legally restrict the sale of the next home and say, I'm sorry, you're not old enough to buy this house. But no one buys them. So I'm thinking we have a project, which hopefully I'll have a chance to talk about, in Lewis that's going to be a for-sale workforce housing project. And I think if it's marketed correctly, I can steer as much of that housing to those that we're actually constructing it for, as opposed to having a bunch of retirees from New Jersey come in and say, great, instead of buying your $650,000 single-family home over there, I'm going to buy your $200,000 big house unit, which is a fancy word for a multi-family unit that looks like a large single-family home when you put 10 units together. But I'm very open, and I am somewhat kind of, it's new to me, I'm very open to financing strategies that I think can indirectly target the demographic, which in this case is the local workforce that we're essentially building this housing for.
IG, Lewis is going through its comprehensive plan implementation review now by the Planning Commission. The county's had some comprehensive review press lately. What's the status of the comprehensive review by the county on its comprehensive plan? And how does that affect what we're talking about in terms of housing?
The current, the draft vision of the draft revision of the comprehensive land use plan mentions that the county should and could and shall, whatever word you want to put in there, look at workforce housing. So, given that and the fact that the county sees it, you know, as a needed thing to do to maintain the county, we just got to do it to keep the county vibrant. The county is actively beginning the process to develop a workforce / affordable housing element. We haven't defined the two, and it becomes more difficult when you try and, the county is, I hate to say divided, but it kind of is. And you got the eastern side and you got the western side. So to develop a plan that meets both of them really is difficult. I mean, there's different income levels, the property values are different. It's just consider because it's just so diverse. And trying to figure out how to make one plan work for a county that's actually divided. So we're in the process of discussing whether going out for an RFP is something that we should do, and I'm really looking to try and get something done immediately so that you can measure the results. So the county's under as fast a power as it has ever been on this topic.
Can you comment on what the state position is on workforce and affordable housing? Do you support it?
Well, at DSHA, we're the state housing finance agency, so one of the key things we do is make that capital financing available on, for developing affordable rental housing through the low-income housing tax credit program, through state resources that are allocated by the General Assembly. The Housing Development Fund is another key resource, and other federal resources like the HOME program. So using our programs to make sure those are available to developers who are wanting to develop affordable rental housing. On the homeownership side, we do a lot of work in our homeownership loan program and down payment and settlement assistance program. So we're working to make sure that there are affordable mortgage rates out there and down payment and settlement assistance to help folks purchase homes, and that's for first time and repeat buyers. And then a whole host of other programs around foreclosure, homelessness, and the whole continuum of housing is really where our focus is on the financing side.
Does the Housing Authority have enough financing to meet the demand in those various categories?
On homeownership, I think we're able to make that available. On affordable rental housing, the demand is really high and there are a lot of development challenges around it. We're usually able to provide financing for 3 to 4 projects a year through those federal and state programs. So I'm sure that we can certainly get more out on the streets, especially on the affordable rental housing side.
I'm going to ask Preston one more question, and then we're going to open it up to you to ask any number of questions, please. Preston, you alluded to the fact that in Lewis you're trying to do something different. Would you explain a little bit about what your approach is there?
Yeah, so we put under contract a property we call the BB property. It's between Savannah Road and Kings Highway, a little bit east of Henlopen Gardens and the high school. We only needed about 10 acres for a senior living project, which is our primary intended development goal for that property. And we had about 8 or 9 acres left over. So we initially proposed, for lack of a better thing to propose, it was on Savannah Road and everybody built a medical office on Savannah Road, so we figured, hey, let's do medical office. We went into the city of Lewis and they said, we don't really like that idea. Why don't you consider, and they said this very delicately, why don't you consider workforce housing on that property? And the thing is, I couldn't believe I was hearing it, because had I known that going in, I would have never proposed a medical office. I would have immediately proposed workforce housing. This is like a permitting jurisdiction saying, why don't you come back to us with something with a far higher density than like maybe not that necessarily the medical office, depending upon how you're looking at it, but then the base underlying zoning. And you often don't hear that from a permitting jurisdiction. And I was trying to get a gauge for how serious they were. Like, hey, is this just kind of, hey, workforce housing, and then as soon as somebody stands up against it, they're going to all go running for the hills? That wasn't the case at all. They were very serious. They had thought about it a lot. It had apparently been a hot topic for 10 to 15 years. And the town had even identified, which is very dangerous to do, IG will tell you. They had identified particular properties in their updated comprehensive land use plan that they thought were appropriate for affordable or workforce housing. And this property, which I should have known this going into that hearing, this property was one of them. So we went back to the drawing board and put together a plan that, in the way that the City of Lewis works, it's a multi-step process. And in some respects, the way they separate the process, they're doing the public and somewhat the developer a disservice. Because, first you get your annexation, then you get your zoning, then you come in with your site plan. They really should combine all those processes and make it one. Because it's hard for, if I'm a city councilman, it's hard for me to make a decision on a property if I don't really know what the developer intends to do. And I can tell you the public doesn't like that at all when they're being asked to how they feel about a rezoning, particularly if it's a rezoning to R5, which is by far and away the most intense residential zoning that the city of Lewis has. By the way, no one could ever do this because of the parking and height restrictions, but the R5 zoning code in Lewis allows for 30 units per acre. You have to have 1,200 square feet of land for every 1 unit, and in every acre there's 43,560 square feet. I think that was probably an accident, but the good news is you'll never see 30 units per acre because they have other restrictions such as height and parking and maximum number of units per building that essentially back you into 12 to 14 units per acre. But we initially proposed, even though we actually never came in with this site plan because we hadn't gotten the zoning yet, but an apartment style community. And the neighbors next door did come out against it, but I gotta tell you, it was some of the most respectful opposition I've seen in a long time. It's a lot more respectful, for better or for worse, than the opposition we typically encounter at the county level. So they didn't go after me personally or after any of the city councilmen personally or anything. Their comments were relative to the project. And we had a public meeting with them. We said, hey guys, here's my 2 ideas. I want to do this affordable rental housing project, which by the way, the market rents for rental housing in this market are between 80 and 100% AMI. So rental housing, if done in a professional kind of manner, is already a lot more affordable than the $600,000 single-family homes we're building out there in projects like Governors and Hawkeye and Senators and projects like that. So both the mayor and the residents next door said, hey, look, we can live with your high-density zoning, but we really don't like this idea of having these large 3-story kind of buildings next to us. Do you have anything different? And so we went back to the drawing board and we came up with this big house concept, and I apologize for not bringing it because I should have brought it here to show you guys so you could see that it really is pretty attractive architecture. And I said, guys, we can do this, but this cost me about $90 to $95 a square foot to build. The 3-story apartment building I can build for about $68 a square foot. If I go to this, I have to go to for sale. So it's going to be relative to the other type of product that's being built in this market. It's a heck of a lot more affordable, but it's not going to be for rent. And I consider for rent to be the most efficient and the most affordable type of housing we could have done on the property. And they said, hey, thanks, we like that a lot better. So we're proposing, it's a 10-unit building, we're proposing 140 units. And I haven't gone into the city of Lewis with this yet, even though a lot of them have seen it, because I've been communicating a lot with Anne Marie and Tom West on this project. But it'll be 14 buildings of 10 units each in this big house style. If some of you might be familiar with a project called Painter's Mill, the multi-family product at Painter's Mill is a 6-unit big house product. So you can understand from a certain perspective, it looks like a large single-family home. And so it mixes in a lot better when it's next to other single-family homes than a 3-story apartment building might. So we're proposing that the 1-bedrooms, and I'm saying this without having a full-blown pro forma or without even having approvals to say this, but we'll start under 200,000, and then it'll go up to probably high 200,000s. Now, some people will naturally respond, well, that's not affordable, Mr. Chow. Well, without any incentives, without any tax credits, being financed entirely by us at market rates, that's affordable. And I can tell you the city of Lewis, and I might be in a honeymoon period, and this may be jinxing me right now, the fact that I'm about to say this. The city of Lewis has been outstanding to work with. They kind of have a bad rap, or had a bad rap amongst the development community, because a lot of people read the Cape Gazette, and we read every developer kind of getting beat up when they come into the city of Lewis, and the process is never ending and very confusing. The process is still close to never ending, but at least the city of Lewis has been open to discussing things. And to the credit of the council, they said they wanted something, and I brought it in. Now, granted, we just have the zoning now. We don't have the site plan approval yet. And I brought it in, and they stood by what they said in the face of opposition. That is not easy to do, and that takes kind of a strong back to say, hey, this is what we want. We know we were going to get opposition. There's no way to do this in our town and not get some form of opposition. but we think it's time for this, and they voted in favor of it. So you'll be able to follow that, what happens over the next probably 5 to 6 months when we're in the final kind of site planning and permitting stages. But I'm pretty excited about that project, and I think what the city of Lewis did can be a message to the county on, hey, look, when a developer shows up with a workforce housing project and they're asking for higher density, don't send them packing and saying, well, we think everybody should live in a 3,500 square foot house, single family home. There's one councilman that loves to say 70%, there's a survey that was done years ago, and 70% of the people buying down here want to live in a single family home. Well, guess what? 90% of the product we're building right now is single family homes. So even if that councilman is right, what's happening, we're still 20% short on the type of product that would be a lot more affordable to the people that want to buy homes down here, which unfortunately I cannot build a 4,000 square foot single family home and sell for under $200,000, unless there's some incredible financing packages I'm unaware of.
All right, let's have questions from you. Please come up to the mic and offer some questions. Please, just come on up. Line up. Come on up.
So my name is Tyler Braun from Housing Alliance, Delaware. This question is specifically for IG, but it's in relation to what we've been talking about. So the comprehensive planning process is the best opportunity to plan for future development and where you want your housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, and the rest of the development, mixed-use development, so on and so forth. And I helped to coordinate what's called the Sussex Housing Group, which has commented a lot on the existing comprehensive plan. We wish to continue to do so. But I was just wondering if you could comment a little bit more. I know that the comp plan did just go through the plus process, which is approval essentially by the state, and now comes back to you for additional comments and approval. And so I was just wondering if there's time for our residents to continue to comment on this and make suggestions and so on and so forth, and what's the process from here on out?
The process for the comprehensive land use plan is that it goes to the state, and where it's at now. The state, all the agencies are going to get a chance to look at it. They're going to make comments on each element of the plan. Then they're going to send it back to us. Then we're going to take their comments and see if we agree with them or not. See if they want. If they say, look, you really think we ought to add this to it, we can say, yeah, we agree with that, or we don't. So then we'll refine a list to what our liking, right? But their liking will still be there. It then goes to a full public hearing of their comments, our comments, and then the public's comments. And then we get it back again, and then we say, okay, we like your comment, we don't like the state's comment, we don't want to add this. So there is time for, there's one more public shot. I think the important thing there is to really be defined in what you're saying, right? To say, you ought to have a better look at affordable housing. It doesn't tell us anything. Right? But if you said, I really think you ought to look at these three things in these three areas, then we can say, you know what, that's more defined, let's write that in there. And I implore you to do that with all elements of the comp plan, to look at it and to really say, this is what it should say right here. And let us discuss that.
Just as inside before on your question, the Lewis Planning Commission is going through a revamp of its zoning ordinances in relation to the comp plan that has gone through the plus process, has been certified, and is now being implemented by the Planning Commission to make recommendations to Mayor and City Council. So there is opportunities locally in Lewis to have input in that process. The next meeting is the 19th. The next meeting after that is the 26th, I believe. And each meeting has an agenda of different zoning classifications. You may be surprised to know that in the city of Lewis, there is an agricultural zoning. We have land that is still zoned for agricultural use in the city of Lewis. Elmer, please.
Sure. So good afternoon. Melody Taylor. I'm actually with the Office of Fair Housing with HUD's Office of Equal Opportunity. So a couple things. I appreciate the panel for coming together. I think this is really important information to share with people. I think there's a huge education. You guys have tossed out lots of language, right? LIHTC and, different things, inclusionary zoning, RD, C3. No one really knows what that means, right? And so in order for them to participate in providing comments to the county on the comprehensive plan, people actually need to be armed with the information. I thought it was really important that you shared that you guys are working through the issues of how to define affordable housing or workforce housing. So if it's hard for you to define, then again, your residents and the public are having an even harder time actually trying to figure out how do I qualify for housing. So if I do quick math on what the median income is, which is probably somewhere around $58,000, $60,000, and if I did a little more math and I looked at 60% of that, so people who make about $30,000 to $34,000 would be the people who would be looking for housing. And so, Mr. Sheldon, you're talking about $200,000, and I fit the profile of $34,000. Nowhere in this particular time would I even be able to achieve getting one of your wonderful, beautiful homes, right? So where do I go? Where do I live? Housing Authority has a database, actually. So knowledge is power. So let me just say that to you as you're sitting in the room, right? So when you're hearing panels like this, go on the website and look up the information. So Delaware State Housing Authority has a website where you can see where the affordable housing is. It shows you. HUD, Housing and Urban Development. We have a website also where there are actually maps that show you exactly where publicly supported housing is in the state, in Sussex County, in Kent County, so you have access to information. You know where housing is. You know what the income means to qualify for housing. So when you guys are talking about inclusionary zoning, or I'm introducing inclusionary zoning into your conversation actually. So really important because, as Amy said, it's not new. This is going on around the country. And in your backyards, it's happening. So in Montgomery County, Maryland, they have an inclusionary zoning plan, moderately priced dwelling units, where developer comes in and Montgomery County requires that a percentage of those units are not workforce housing, but affordable units. So people who meet that median income actually can purchase a home or rent in a particular community. So I think several years ago, the county embarked upon looking at those things. I'm giving you guys lots of information very quickly. Not on the panel, I'm here in an unofficial capacity, but I have this information. You can absolutely reach out to me or my office, and I can share, because I think, again, information is power. There's a process in which the state embarked upon in 2011, which is called the Analysis of Impediments. It is a document that requires citizens' participation, right? You're able to provide comments on the con plan and understand everything that they're talking about and figure out where those impediments are to people, the residents who are able to access housing. So from a departmental perspective, HUD provides funding to the county, to the state, and to other areas in order for them to do just that, create safe, decent, and affordable housing in a manner that affirmatively furthers fair housing, right, in a fair and equitable manner. And so being a part of that process is really critical, and your voices can be heard. So I'm sure Marlene is going to talk a little bit more about the state is about to embark upon a new process right now. So my office is working with the Delaware State Housing Authority, Sussex County, Kent County, Newcastle County in developing this plan. A big piece of the plan is community engagement and community involvement. And so we're working with them to do just this, bring groups of people together like this and unpackage exactly what your concerns are. If education is impeding you from being able to access affordable housing, then the state, the county, and others will have to create a process. I love when you said measurable, Mr. Burton. Those measurable things that help people get to information and figure out how many people need to get to that information. And we also have to define where the greater needs are, right? Who needs housing? So unpackaging that profile for who needs housing is critically important. So I implore you to educate yourself on exactly what they're speaking about. Go on the websites. If you have access to the internet, go on the websites. And if you don't have access to the internet, this is all public information. Walk into an office and just ask, can I see the consolidated planning process, your consolidated plan? Can I see your annual action plan so you know exactly what's happening in your communities or what's not and what you would like to see in your communities. So again, I will share with the panel my information, and we'll make sure if you email me, I'll get information out to you guys. Thank you.
I would add on that we are excited about starting that process of doing the new analysis and assessment of fair housing. And I was excited to learn about this group because I think this is exactly the kind of group and venue we really want to come back to when we're on the community participation piece of that, and can come back with data and maps and be able to share and discuss what's where the needs are, and what the needs are in the community.
I heard things like affordable housing. I heard USDA. I filled out an application with USDA for a whole year and got shot down with that, because of the credit score thing, which did not explain to me very well. But I also heard affordable housing, and I sit on the board that's called West Freehold Community Land Trust. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I do have some pamphlets I would like for y'all to look at. I heard a whole great deal about Shower Brother. When I got shot down from the USDA, someone said, get in contact with Shower Brother, talk to Shower Brother, because there may be something that they can do. Once again, in West Freehold Community Land Trust, we have built 3 homes. We have partnered with Habitat. So we have built 3 new affordable housing homeowners in West Rehoboth, and I'm very proud of that, being, a resident in West Rehoboth and owning a piece of property in West Rehoboth. And my thought and my comment to the panel is, if you mention land trust and everything, what could you do for West Rehoboth Land Trust in order to help us to make affordable housing in West Rehoboth? Right now, we do have, I think, about 6 units. We have 4 rental, and we have 3 who have purchased their first home. And I thought that was a very good start for the Community Land Trust in West Rehoboth.
Maybe do you have any thoughts for West Land Trust?
Yeah, I think, West Rehoboth it's such a conundrum because the property there, the property values are rising so quickly that it's really, it's hard to capture it. And the people who are capturing it are people who are investors. They're coming in, they're buying it, and they're waiting for the residents to, eventually, age out or what have you. I don't know. But I think that, certainly, one thing we can do, and I've served 10 years on the board of Diamond State Community Land Trust, which is, doing some work in Ellendale right now. And, the beauty for the land trust, for those who don't know, is that, once that property is in trust, it is forever in trust, right? So, the person who lives there now is making an affordable income. The person who comes after that person will be making an affordable income. And so the subsidy dollars that are placed into those units stay in those units. So what better investment can you have than creating a unit that's going to be affordable for years and years and years and years? And so, the issue is that, doing that investment in Ellendale requires a little less subsidy than doing it in West Rehoboth. So I think West Rehoboth is a slower process because of, needing to raise those dollars. I think some of the things that we can do as a county and as a community for West Rehoboth is really be mindful of what comes before county council in West Rehoboth. So there are uses in that community that are not community uses. We've got storage facilities there, we've got all kinds of things there that are not community-based facilities. This is a neighborhood after all. And, in a lot of places, we have to ask for permission to do everything, right? So, we have to ask for permission for that upzoning to do something useful, to do something really good for our community. We have to ask for permission to place a shelter. We have to ask for permission to place a duplex instead of placing, a single unit. And so, I think if we looked at West Rehoboth, and other communities and said, we're willing to allow some changes in that community, make lots smaller, other things like that, so that we can put more units there more affordably. And we can be mindful of what else we're approving in that community too, because it's not fair to that community. We're always thinking about, okay, well, what's fair to the neighbors? Well, what's fair to you, when you're going into those communities.
Thank you, Ellen. Do we have a representative of Habitat here? There was one. Do you want to comment on your experience? And I'll give them a little shout out while he's coming up. One of the houses in West Rehoboth, one of the key workers on that who was actually performing carpentry work was 92 years old. So we're all too young to say we can't do it.
Little Bob is famous for his age and his ability. My name is Kevin Gilmore, and I'm with Sussex County Habitat for Humanity. To answer your question, with our West Rehoboth Community Land Trust experience, is a phenomenal way to provide what was already an affordable housing product to even lower income home buyer, because the land was put in the trust, and then Habitat built the house and we sold the house. So they weren't buying the land, they were buying the house. Our financial model makes it even more affordable because we were financing it as well. And there may be a blend there. Perhaps you put your land in a trust. In a land trust model, apply the same model, still have a similar target audience to what you're having. But the land trust model would protect that for current buyers and future buyers at certain income levels. And even at a higher income level than what we do, it's still an income level that's more affordable than any other product around, and still meet your range. So that's one idea. The other idea I was thinking along those lines is there legislation that allows, the same type of legislation that allows for our senior living communities that could be applied to our moderately priced housing communities. And then you got 20% of those communities that could be any age group or any income group, but 80% focusing on moderately priced. You can use some of these tools we've used in different ways and reframe how we use those tools. Something that's just glaring to me today as I'm listening to this, and there's some other housing folks in the audience, and everyone's interested in this theme or else we wouldn't be here, is that we really need to reframe the conversation. And I think we're talking about housing as an issue of those, well, I shouldn't say housing. We're talking about access to housing as an issue for those who don't have access to housing. And really, we should be talking about access to housing as a societal issue that affects our entire society. If we can start talking about that differently, I think it'll raise its priority on the council agenda. If we look at housing as a veteran issue, housing as a health issue, housing as an employee issue, housing as an employer issue in some cases. But if we look at it as this is foundational to our whole fabric of what we're used to, and it's all relative. Like, who here thinks you should spend more than 50% of your income on housing? Doesn't matter what your income is, that's not right. So we're framing it as this is an issue that affects all of us. Nobody should spend more than 50% of their income on housing, regardless of what your income is. The fact is, it's just really hard if your income's $35,000. So there's access issues, but I really think there's a framing issue that we need to elevate this. I was thinking about it and likening it to the opioid epidemic. A few years ago, that was an issue for drug addicts. Today, it's an issue for our society. And how can that shift happen? Because I think access to housing at all levels is an issue for our whole society. I didn't have a question, sorry.
One of the things, I just want to add something to your comment. We recognize what you do, and it's tremendous. And what's Brandon and Brad's office? What is it? CBG? What are those initiatives? Community development. What the council did in this year's funding is that we added. I don't remember the dollar amount, but it's a huge amount of money into community development to maintain people in their houses, which is just has never happened before, because that's the first place you can start to make a difference, to keep people in the houses that they currently live in. So the county has added thousands of dollars into the community development fund to help more of the people that are currently in a house that is unsatisfactory to live. So the county's proactively following what you do with current houses, and I appreciate it.
Anybody else? Another question, please, from the floor? While we're waiting for that, let me change slightly our focus and raise another question that's at a different level. What housing is available for the unemployed or the substantially underemployed in Sussex County? How do we handle those issues? How do we handle housing for people who can't afford to buy, don't have the credit rating or standing, and may not even have a job? What do we do for them?
A group of affordable housing providers, social service agencies, and communities that come together on a monthly basis to talk about housing issues. And I chair the advocacy committees, so I've been preparing a lot of the comments for the comprehensive plan. And I think there's a couple of things we can do. So one of them that I think is really easy, and we brought it up in our public comments, is related to the garage and studio apartment ordinance. There is one, but it's not easy to implement. And so when I mentioned earlier the idea that we're constantly asking for permission, we want to create a housing unit, we have to ask for permission. So one of the things that I would say, just comprehensive plan broadly for comments, is we need to be able to do more things by right? So Kent County has adjusted their ordinance that says, if you do these things, and one of those things is talk to your neighbors, and make them aware of what you're doing, that you can place an accessory dwelling unit, and it says, what the square footage needs to be, how much land you have to have, those sorts of things, so that you could place, and I hate to use the term, but you could put like a tiny house, or you could create a garage apartment, or you could do something. And theirs is designed for senior parents, and I would argue that perhaps the better use might be for even adult children and family members and the like that are having a tough time. Because I think all of us, really want to embrace our community, and we want to embrace our families, and that's one, really simple thing that could be adjusted from an ordinance perspective, where we could, create an avenue by right to do those accessory dwelling units, to provide, really affordable, and they are, inspected by the code office, and that's one thing to make sure everything is safe and sound. So I think that is one. I think the idea of, really examining, even housing cooperatives and really other styles of housing. There is a really great example of a tiny house community in Tallahassee, and they have 3 different sizes of homes. They have the site plans online, and they have the rents online, and you go and you apply, and they have a community facility that you can use for a laundry service and the like, but you are living in what is ultimately an 800 square foot house, small house. And some of those types of homes are existing, on single lots throughout our county today. But really examining, what are some ways that we can get really creative too. And I think the challenge with being creative is that, we don't have any parameters, and so when we come forth and we present ideas, we're not really sure where we're going and what the response is going to be. So I think, setting some basic parameters around those types of things that might make it easier for people to do things either by right, or at least have a set of parameters of what we're looking for the placement of those types of units.
Pure 76-year-old Louis, Delaware. Born and raised here. I don't know how many people here from Delaware. But I can speak, and I'm speaking. The last question that was asked is about if you're unemployed or underemployed, most likely going to end up in prison. Most likely. Not all the time, but most likely you do. Because if it's a minor crime, maybe stealing a friend, you're going to find survival. But what happens when you come out? What type of housing are you going to be able to get? You can't get government public housing. You can't get that. So what type of affordable housing? Again, you're going to be homeless. So what are you suggesting that we do with those that maybe it's still can get housing. And you can say all you want to about the record sponge, but there's always somebody that will bring back your past. You know, you may have done the crime and paid the time, but we still have that animosity against certain things. So I would like to know if a gentleman been, a lady, whoever, has been in prison for a period of time, has come out and working in society, doing the best they can, if they can get a job. Because everybody went home. So what happens? Where do they live?
And it's even worse if they're a sex offender too, right? I mean, let's be honest, it's really difficult. There's a really great example, and it's happening in another county of our state, and I don't know if it's been through the public process yet, so I don't know, create a public hearing nightmare for them, but they have actually are taking possession of an old motel, and they are using that motel and converting it predominantly for single men who are ex-offenders. They are providing workforce connections to them. They have a lot of connections with businesses in the community to try to get them jobs. It's going to be accessible for people who are sex offenders based on its location and the nonprofit that's going to be running it. But I think that's really a prime example of repurposing a building that could potentially be a blighted building in this particular community for that very purpose. Because you're right. I mean, there aren't units available for them. That anybody can comment.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I would add on that criminal background additions too are such huge barriers for housing, often not only in federally subsidized or other subsidized housing, but even in cases, and they're not blanket bans on criminal background. So like we at DSHA have a matrix, and there are different categories fall in different places. So how many years it's been, don't quiz me on it, but even if someone can get through and get, say, like a housing voucher, for example, criminal background can be a major challenge with private landlords. So I think there's a lot of community education and outreach and work to do with kind of the general community of property managers and landlords and owners.
Are there any property managers here tonight that are currently managing properties? Do you have any persons who fall at that 30 or 50% AGI level who are looking for housing? Okay, I'm going to offer, go ahead.
My name is Matt Keckler. My family's had a rental house for 35 years here in Dewey. And over the years, as the family's got larger, we kept expanding. And now sleeps 10. A number of years ago, I decided to start renting to young people during the summer. I finally had to stop doing that for my own mental health. Also, to be sure I couldn't cover the damages. So I had to change the Airbnb. Who is taking care of providing housing, workforce housing for seasonal? These kids come here, what do? They say they can't do a room. What are we doing for them? What are we doing for these kids?
Anybody have any comments, thoughts?
I can tell you this time, very little. We proposed, this is probably going back 17 to 18 years now, behind the new church, I'm trying to remember what it is now, but where Tomato Sunshine used to be, but now, yeah, behind Epworth, that land, before the state bought it, we were trying to buy that land, and we had proposed what we were calling summer housing, but it was housing for these summer employees, many from out of the country, that were coming here, and we didn't even get in the hearing room. I mean, that's how adamant the people that lived back in the Glade and lived in the neighborhood next door were against. I mean, they were saying things, writing letters together, that it's going to be drug dealers and prostitutes and blah. You know, it got so bad that I said, hold on a second. I thought I was going to kind of get a pat on the back for doing this, and instead I'm getting annihilated. It's not worth it. So we didn't even pursue it. There comes a time in this county where I think the county has to change on certain things that it decides it wants in its land use plan, from being a reactive zoning code to a proactive zoning code. The county needs to hire that professional planner and say, assume every undeveloped piece of parcel was for sale at a reasonable price. Where should we put this type of housing? Where should we put workforce housing? Where should we put housing for the individuals that the woman was just discussing that just got out of prison? Where should we put affordable housing? So, 20 to 50% AMI type housing. Where's the infrastructure? And then go out there and zone it. Other jurisdictions do this. I lived for a little while out in Utah, and in the area I lived in Utah, there's no such thing as a rezoning. The city itself and the county, they get together and decide we need more property for this type of housing. We need more property for this type of development. And then they zone it, and if you're a developer and you want to build it, go find one of those properties. They don't rezone. And as soon as every one of those properties for that type of housing or type of development is developed, then they get back together and zone more. Granted, this is an area that has the benefit of having a base underlying zoning of like 1 unit for every 100 acres. So we don't have, getting back to why we have a reactive zoning code, we don't have that. But it's going to be very difficult for the more forward-thinking county council members, which IG is one of them, to make any significant change and to effectuate change if we can't get some momentum behind it. For years we've had what I'll call lip service in our comprehensive land use plan. Look, we've never really had that comprehensive land use plan. You can read the comprehensive land use plan from 15 years ago. It sounds great. The problem is they never actually pass ordinances that encourage that. They rely on guys like me to come in and make a case and say, well, your comprehensive land use plan says this. And then they say, yeah, but we got 50 angry people standing behind you that don't want us to do this. So we know it says that, but too bad. It'd be a lot easier for me, and granted this is somewhat self-serving, but it'd be a lot easier for me if they said, hey, this is zoned, I don't care if it's my property, I don't care what property you rezone, but this is zoned for that type of housing, and if you want to develop that property, that is what you will do. That way I can show up and it's by right, the workforce housing. And also that way, ideally, whatever they've zoned is the appropriate location for it. I'm bending over backwards to find property. When I go out there and look for property, I look for property that is appropriate for, we're now getting into doing workforce rental housing. So we do obviously, as you probably are very aware, a lot of for sale housing at higher price points to the retiree population. But I look first for something that seems appropriate, and then second, I look for one that I don't think has a lot of neighbors that are going to show up against it. I look for opportunities where, we're backed up against wetlands here, and there's about 300 or 400 feet of woods, so we don't have neighbors right behind us, so that's good news. So hopefully nobody will show up there. This property's not developed yet. So some of these properties seem a tad rural, but I do that on purpose. Because I promise you, if I went right in and I had neighbors living in $600,000 houses all surrounding this property, and I asked for workforce housing, I don't think we could get everybody in the county council chambers that would want to object to that proposal. So that's just an idea that we'll see what happens, but I know IG is pushing it, but he could use as much support as all the collective of us can give him and the community can give him.
Any other questions from the audience, please?
My name is Harris Marks. I have a son who came down several years ago with a serious mental disability. 5 years ago, he applied for Section 8 housing, and he was told there was a 2.5 year wait. 5 years have gone by, it's now 1.5 to 2 year wait. So at this rate, it would be 25 years before he would finally get housing. The gentleman from Habitat mentioned housing means certain things. is health. And as part of someone like my son in recovery, being independent, being on his own, having his own apartment, is part of his recovery. And something like this, doesn't help. Also, other states have a program, Maryland is an example, where the state actually buys homes, apartments, and they give them or rent them out to people with disabilities. I'd like to see Delaware do something like that. Again, Marlena, I would address, what can we do in all these areas? Thank you.
I definitely hear you on the lengthy waiting list. I know at DSHA and we're the Public Housing Authority for Kent and Sussex County, our waiting list is extremely long. And I think that's a sign that there's not nearly enough of that federal rental assistance to go around. I think the statistic that I hear nationally is that across the country, for every 4 families who are eligible, 1 might have access to federal rental assistance. And we've added on to that in Delaware for special populations with the state rental assistance program, which has been around for a couple of years. So, there's the overall rental assistance that's available to everyone, and then there are other set-asides of assistance. That the door to those is not necessarily through the overall waiting list, but maybe through a service provider if someone's at high risk of homelessness or exiting an institution. So we know that that's not always the case for everyone, that we have some of those resources set aside. And so those are tenant-based rental assistance, those are housing vouchers. Access to them is through the state division or one of their providers. So that's available through the Division of Developmental Disability Services, DSAM, the Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, and their providers, and a couple of other partner state agencies. And so that's on the tenant-based side, and then there are definitely organizations in Delaware, and we have provided some of the financing to help make these happen, that have purchased and run out group homes with different levels of supportive services that are available in the home. Some are pretty hands-off, some of them are more intensive, 24-hour, and those are also set aside for different populations, and usually through the division or through nonprofit service providers that are specializing in those populations. But I know the need there is very great. I think there are about 700 households with assistance through the state rental assistance program right now, and that is also fully maxed out. And I know that our partner agencies have waiting lists of folks who need more.
I think this is really a great discussion for pointing out the complexities and the need, as we all know. And since you had this live audience here of supporters, I wonder very specifically what you could say that we can actually do to help make a difference for you and for the clients that we're talking about, as specific as you could possibly be, so we could do something meaningful.
Thank you. IG, you want to start?
That's a good one. The county is just at the beginning stages and defining what we can do, what we want to do, what we should do, and so the ball really hasn't begun to roll. I believe that if you're talking workforce housing, if you just talk about workforce housing, that might be a little easier than some of the other ones, right? And so if we just attacked that one, we said we're gonna work on workforce housing. How are we gonna go about it? addresses workforce housing. And now, does his program work for the county? That's the question. So we're at the beginning stages. We're trying to figure out what direction we're going to go. And what we have to do is get on it so that then I can come to you and I can say, hey, this is what we need for you to do. We're at this point, and now we need to go to the next point. But we got to begin first, and I can tell you that we're beginning now.
I would add in from the state perspective. I think a lot of our resources are state and federal that come through that we're able to pass on to the kind of projects that come to fruition around the state. And I think if you're active with your legislators, letting them know that housing is important to you, thanking them for the investments they've made in housing. I think the General Assembly has significantly increased its investments in housing and community development in the past several years. So I think it's always helpful to thank as well, and then echo that those investments are important and that they are critical for you and your family.
I think your personal advocacy is the most important thing that you can do. So, to Marlena's point, if you are happy with, the additional investments that the state has made in housing, make sure your legislators know. June is prime time to say to them, this is a major need in our community. We need more rental vouchers. We need more of this. We need more of that, because they are hearing a lot of voices that are pulling them in a lot of different directions. And so this is a voice that needs to be strong and one that they need to hear from repeatedly. I would say as well, the comprehensive plan, that public hearing is coming back up. There are things, in there that the county has done a good job of identifying things that they are interested in exploring. I think, there's an opportunity for us to come forth and say, we don't want you to explore, we want you to make some commitments in the plan. And so, and it's simple just looking at the housing draft and, look at those words, we're going to explore, we're going to examine, we're going to, and then, really define what are those things that you want the county to commit to and ask for that commitment. And then I would say the other thing is, when there is a project that's coming before county council or coming before city council that is for workforce housing or for affordable housing or for a shelter or transitional home that we know is very needed, there is going to be a room full of people who can't stand it. And there may be 3 or 4 of us who are saying this is desperately needed. And if that 3 or 4 can grow to 30 and 40, even if you don't say anything, but occasionally they ask, let me just see a show of hands, who's here in support. It makes all the difference in the world, because the county council people, your city council people know that you're there, that you're caring, and that you're lending your voice to it, and that it's not just all opposition. So you have to really be mindful of the opportunities to just raise your hand and say, I'm here in support of that.
So in that vein, and to answer the specific question, I have a project that's coming up in October, in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I think it's October 11th. I left my cell phone in the car. And that's at 6 o'clock at the County Council Chambers in Georgetown. And then I think it's November 14th on Tuesday in the County Council Chambers. But that's a workforce housing project. I call it West Fenwick. I think legally it's actually in Sullyville. It's kind of near Americana Bayside, a little bit further from that. But if you looked at, there's a big drawback to that area in the sense that there's no public transportation. And we're trying, there's actually on September 13th, I just heard about this in the Cape Gazette today, DART is having a public meeting to ask the residents about their public transportation and what they could do better. So I can tell you, I'm going to show up there and say, why do you have nothing south of the Rehoboth Bay? And so we'll have to fill in that gap, but if you look at the type of housing where rental housing is available, there is nothing available in that entire area. So that's something we're doing. And then another comment for IG is they have to have, look, if you get together and you're meeting at the county level with people from the Sussex Housing Group and you're kind of trying to get excited about affordable housing, it's natural to say, yeah, well, why don't we do 60% AMI? Well, why don't we do 50% AMI? These conversations are happening in a void without a banker or a real estate private equity guy or a developer in the room that's running it through a model to tell them whether it's financially viable or not. So the reason the program that they have now has never been used and will never ever get used, mark my words on this, is because it's not financially viable. There's no incentive. There's a gap between, there are programs out there, and the HUD programs and the tax credit programs, and definitely what Habitat does are excellent. But there's a gap in what in our county, and actually almost nationally, between that 60 and 120% AMI. So there's programs, we could always use more affordable housing for 30, 40, 50% AMI. I'm not saying that that's taken care of in any respect. But there aren't a lot of programs out there for what I'll refer to as the workforce. And the incentives the county offer are a drop in the bucket. They're not really incentives. So I would ask that the county have somebody there. It doesn't have to be me. Just have somebody there with a finance background that's checking your new plan. The worst thing that can happen is they come out with a new plan that, again, no one ever uses. Which is likely if you have a group of people and you don't have anybody with a finance background in the room. If you can talk to my hearings, that would be great.
We're running over time. I'll make one last comment, and then we'll be open for comments up here. I'm going to build on what Preston just said and suggest specifically, IG, that the county begin to establish a link between zoning and housing and jobs in its comprehensive plan and in its zoning ordinances in the future. Compare, develop, and perfect housing and jobs rather than just theoretically having a zoning classification that makes no sense. Get baseline, get specific, which I know is the trend in a lot of jurisdictions. But I am going to stop us because we're at the bewitching hour. We will be here for questions. On behalf of the Southern Delaware Alliance Racial Justice, I want to thank all four of you for taking time to come tonight. Very informative. For all of you out there, we want you to stay engaged. We want you to be involved, both with the Alliance and other housing organizations, Habitat and others. Please don't make this your last visit. Stay on the housing track. Thank you very much.